Accounting firm owners, if your firm can only grow as fast as you can find the time to take on new clients, you're not alone. Fortunately, Dark Horse CPAs has built a platform-style CPA firm that will transform your practice. It has the technology, resources, staffing, qualified inbound leads, and community that will enable you to spend your time growing your practice, serving clients, and doing more of what you love. Stay tuned to learn more about how Dark Horse CPAs is saving public accounting one firm at a time.
If you'd like to earn CPE credit for listening to this episode, visit earmarkcpe.com. Download the app, take a short quiz, and get your CPE certificate. Continuing education has never been so easy. And now, on to the episode.
This is Oh My Fraud, a true crime podcast where we talk about fraudulent deductions rather than felony decapitations. I'm Caleb Newquist.
And I'm Greg Kite.
Greg, remind me, what was your first job?
So my first job, I started working as a cashier at my mom's drugstore in Mount Lake Terrace, Washington. I was 14 years old when I started working for her. And the story goes like this. She started the drugstore with two partners. And after about exactly 1 year, they hated each other like crazy. Hated each before toxic
Hatfield and McCoy's.
Before toxic workplace was an expression. That's 100% what this was. And so one day, I remember it was I think it was in the summer between 7th and 8th grade. I think I was 14, and basically the partners that she had, they were just like, fuck you and fuck this store and we're out of here. And they just like walked out in the middle of the day. And so my mom came up to me and she was like, "Hey, hon, looks like you work here now," and taught me how to use a cash register. And that began my career as a drugstore cashier, which turned into doing the books for her drugstore, which eventually led me to becoming a CPA. So that was my first job, Caleb.
I'm looking forward to future discussions where I learn more about who is the monster in this particular relationship, your mom or her partner.
Oh, it was the partners.
Oh, okay.
I mean, what are you saying about my mom, Caleb? It was
nothing at all.
It was her
nothing at all. That she's a human being. That people have their moments.
No,
I don't know.
She's my mom, Caleb. You shut your damn mouth about my mom. Okay, this podcast is over. We'll do it in post.
We'll do it in post. Okay, so since that fateful summer day,
yeah,
has there ever been a period in your life when you didn't get a paycheck?
You mean like a period of time when I was not employed, so I wasn't getting a paycheck?
Yeah, essentially, yes.
Or are you talking about when my mom's failed drugstore didn't have the cash to where she was like, "Hey, son, can you wait an extra week?"
Right. No, I mean, I mean, we're more or less. But what I'm saying is, has there ever been a time that every other week or on the 15th or the last day of the month that money didn't hit your account?
Gotcha. And yeah, there was,
or that you deposited a check or whatever.
Right. I think that there were some rather short periods of time while I was a college student where maybe I just was a student and didn't really have like a job at the same time. I think there was some, but I can't actually like pinpoint those times.
I started working at 16, and there's only been a couple of periods in my life where I didn't receive a paycheck. Number one was my freshman year of college, where it's the whole thing where it's like, well, get adjusted to college life before I mean, plenty of people didn't do that, but I did not work my freshman year.
Gotcha.
And then my year of graduate school, which was exactly 12 months, I did not work.
Okay.
And I don't recommend working as a graduate student because it's hell.
Mm-hmm.
So that felt like a good time not to be working. But also, I was unemployed from late 2008, like early November 2008 to early 2009. I got laid off from my Big Four job. It was the financial crisis. A lot of people out of work. I was one of them. And I got unemployment benefits from the state of New York every week. And it was not a lot of money. It wasn't a great time. in my life.
And that clearly shows, Caleb, that you are one pathetic loser. I've never been laid off or fired from anything, but you, on the other hand, you crushed it.
I mean, I have to say, the woman who was with me broke up with me shortly after that.
What?
So there is evidence. There is evidence to support your position, Greg.
What?
That's all I'm saying.
Your girlfriend was like, I don't want to be with an unemployed, pathetic loser. That's weird.
I mean, that isn't exactly the words that she used, but
okay.
There may have been some subtext there
that
I wasn't picking up on at the time.
All right.
Anyway. All right. So I guess there's a couple points here. Number one, for most people, not getting a paycheck is pretty much unimaginable. I think a lot of people start working and they don't stop. Like I think about my dad. My dad started work. I don't even know what age my dad started working, but my dad has been at the same job for over 40 years. He's never not gotten a paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, because we all need money to live.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Pay bills, food. And so if a paycheck doesn't hit your bank account every week or every 2 weeks, whatever it is, then, you know, as has been well established, things can get dire pretty quickly.
Yeah.
If people aren't working.
Yeah.
And I guess the second point is, and this is slightly mechanical, but does anyone understand how paychecks even work anymore?
Like,
Greg, do you remember Greg, you certainly remember a time where you actually picked up a physical check for the jobs that you did, right?
yeah. Yes.
And it was in the security envelope, so you couldn't see through it.
Yeah.
And you had to physically go to a bank to deposit it.
Yeah,
there's
no app on a smartphone where you could just take a picture of the front and back and
I know.
Yeah. No.
It was the Stone Age.
Yeah.
I mean, it's unbelievable. But I do remember this time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I absolutely know that I had physical paychecks when I was working for my mom at her drugstore. And I swear that I even did the payroll for her. Like I calculated the deductions and all that sort of stuff for everybody's paychecks. So I did payroll for her. But again, that was so long ago. I'm only pretty sure I even did that. It might be a false memory, but I don't remember exactly when I stopped getting, like, I don't remember when things went to direct deposit, if that's what you're saying.
Yeah, I don't remember when I first started using direct deposit, but I think I remember feeling like, oh, this is nice.
Mm-hmm.
You never had to worry about losing the check.
Right.
I mean, that seems like a terrifying thing.
Right.
Like when you had to piss up. I mean, because it certainly happened to people countless times.
See, and
it never happened to me.
My whole take on that stuff is the opposite, where I go, I don't know if this might just be bullshit. Is this new tech really going to work? Oh, I guess everybody else is doing it, so I'll do it too. So I'm not the only one who gets fucked if this doesn't work out. But I mean, it worked. But after it works the first couple times, when the money, you're just looking at your bank account, you know, and again, the other thing is about direct deposit. Like, how did you look at like it used to be, you couldn't just like go on to the internet to look at your balance in your bank. You had to go to the bank. True.
You had to go, I'd like to observe my balance, please, at the ATM.
Jeez.
And that's what you knew what was in the bank account, unless you kept like a rigorous, unless you balance your checkbook every goddamn day, which only lunatics do that.
I'm a fucking lunatic, because I would do that. I kept, I was like going, how did I do that? Oh, right. I had that little part in the back of the checkbook that had the check register. I was meticulous.
Oh,
with
good
that.
for you.
Meticulous. So,
yeah, I wasn't good at it. I was like, fuck it.
Well, I guess you didn't start doing bookkeeping when you were 14. Maybe if you were an early starter like me.
You had a head start.
Yeah.
I mean, anyway, direct deposit is super convenient.
Right.
I think like nowadays, it just like, I know there's people, there are like some businesses don't use it, but I think that's insane.
Yeah.
I think if I was an employee, I'd be like, what the fuck are you doing? Just do direct deposit. Like, what the fuck is wrong?
Right. Right.
You know? But anyway, I mean, because lots of businesses these days, they just use payroll processors, right? And so they don't think about any of this stuff.
Yeah. I
mean, the tech has gotten so good that businesses really don't have to think about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And the crazy thing too, I mean, when it comes to the payroll processors, one thing that I think, and this is I think part of what you were getting at, is that even accountants have sort of lost touch with how like crazy complicated payroll is. You and I, we did a couple webinars about like the history of payroll.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, it's so intimidating and onerous. And we forget that, because what is the other side of that coin is payroll is all just math. You put in the inputs
Yep.
and there's an output at the end. And so because of that, payroll is one area of accounting that's been 100% taken over by robots. Caleb, you work for Gusto.
I do.
Which is a payroll company.
It is.
I use your product at my day job. And
that's nice.
Yeah, and we said, yes, you're welcome. And it's basically it. We set up everybody's parameters who are our employees, and then and that's most of the inputs. And then after that, processing payroll is me just entering the hours for our 2 hourly employees and then hitting submit, and it's done. And if we had no hourly employees, it would be, I mean, I don't even know
even easier.
I don't even know if I'd really I think I'd still have to hit submit. So yeah, so there you go. So that's so that's what the state of payroll is and has been for a long time.
So I think we've established that payroll processors are good. They run like clockwork. They get all the necessary info to pay a business's employees, including banking info, when the payday, the day of the day the payday is supposed to be run.
Yeah.
The money that goes into the employer's bank account and then into the workers' bank accounts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. And into the all the taxes get paid on the right day. So yeah, that's all there is to it. There's nothing complicated about it at all. If you're using robots, and it basically, I mean,
and the robots work.
The robots work.
As long as the robots know what they're doing, then there's really nothing to it.
Yeah, and it's never. I mean, I've we run a very small team, and I've always been in charge of payroll since I've been working for the 13 years I've been working for my company, and we've never had a problem with our payroll. It's always gone off fine. And one of the things that I know about payroll too is that you can't screw up payroll. People will go effing bonkers if it's not like people are now that you can look at stuff online, people are going, did it hit yet? Did it hit yet? Did it hit yet? Oh, there it is. Okay, good. And so if it's not doing that, you're going to get calls from people immediately. So it goes off without a hitch, and it better go off without a hitch.
But sometimes it doesn't. And so that's what today's podcast is about.
What?
On a seemingly ordinary day in early September 2019, employees of thousands of businesses got a very unpleasant surprise. The Albany Business Review reported that, quote, direct deposits had been withdrawn from their accounts after a Clifton Park payroll processing company, MyPayrollHR, abruptly stopped processing payroll transactions.
Wait, direct deposits were withdrawn? Like people said, oh, hey, it hit my account. And then they're like, hey, where the hell did it go?
Yes.
So they got
exactly.
They got paid and then they got unpaid?
Well, they got unpaid. And what's really weird is the company sent out a very strange message to its customers.
The payroll company?
Yes.
Okay.
So, and this comes from the article. It read, I'm quoting from the article now. We regret to inform you that due to unforeseen circumstances, we are no longer able to process any further payroll transactions. Please find alternative methods for processing your payrolls. For any payroll batches submitted during this week, including any payroll reversals from last week, please be prepared to find an alternative method to pay employees. We are working to release any funds that are in transit as a result of this matter.
So that's absolutely insane. So MyPayrollHR, out of nowhere, with zero warning, told its customers, hey, just FYI, we're not going to do your payroll, so good luck. Go get them, guys. They didn't even wish them good luck. It was just like, hey, you're screwed. Don't call us. That's kind of what it was. I've never. So this is the first time us doing this case. This is the first time I've heard of this. I've never heard of anything like this before. Have you heard of something where a payroll company like clawed back payroll that people legitimately earned in mass?
I have not. I have not.
Okay.
But Greg.
Yes. Caleb.
It actually gets even worse.
It does.
Yeah.
Please explain.
Not only did the company stop processing payroll for its customers out of the blue,
right?
Not only did some of those employees of those businesses have their pay unpaid,
you're right.
Some employees had another paycheck withdrawn from their accounts, and in some cases, another paycheck.
So some people had up to like 3 paychecks yanked back out of their account?
I think we'll get into this in a bit, but most commonly, like a lot of people had a month's worth of pay unpaid out of their bank accounts.
Okay. Jeez. That's okay. So with that, so I've got to think, I mean, we hear this all the time, like in the news, it's like, yeah, I don't know what it is. Like 60% of Americans are only $400 away from financial disaster or something like that. You remember hearing all that stuff?
Yeah.
So if that's the case, and assuming that most paychecks are larger than $400, we're talking personal financial crises for tons and tons of people because they have negative bank balances and they don't even have enough money to refill their anti-anxiety medication.
I mean, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And it actually even gets weirder. So,
okay.
Yep. MyPayrollHR's own employees had their paychecks reversed too.
Okay. And so at least they're not like no preference for everybody's on an equal playing field.
Equal opportunity on payment.
Yeah, we're screwing everybody, even our people. So we're not the bad guys here.
Right. So I'm going back to this Albany Business Review, and I'm quoting again. Jason Coney, a former business data analyst at MyPayrollHR, said employees were called into a meeting at 1 p.m. on Thursday. They were told MyPayrollHR was shutting down and everyone had to go home. Coney said he was, quote, blindsided by the abrupt news. Things had been normal on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week. He said he has tried to contact the upper management and the owner, and they have not responded to his calls.
If you own an accounting firm, then you know the struggle. Trying to develop the right technology, the right people, the right marketing and pricing strategies, and the right SOPs while handling all of the one-off issues that come with being a business owner on top of your duty to deliver high-quality work amid pressing deadlines. To say it ain't easy is an understatement. Dark Horse knows that building a scalable practice requires a significant investment of your limited time and money in order to build the infrastructure that you need. And it requires you to be consistently sourcing, developing, and implementing new technologies in order to keep up with the marketplace. Instead of breaking your back trying to build a modern accounting firm, why not just join a firm that has already built what your practice needs to scale? Instead of trading your soul to merge into a giant traditional partnership model firm, why not join a firm that will allow you to keep your autonomy, retain ownership of your practice, and provide you with way more upside in a fast-growing, progressive firm? Instead of trying to learn everything you need to know to serve your clients, why not shortcut your learning curve by collaborating with a supportive group of experienced and knowledgeable peers at Dark Horse? There's a better way to evolve your practice. There's a better way to be a CPA. Dark Horse invites you to visit abetterway.cpa to learn why firms are moving their practice to Dark Horse CPAs.
At the time of all this mysterious unpaying,
Yeah.
MyPayrollHR had over 4,000 customers across the country, so nationwide, and a couple hundred employees.
Okay, and let me make sure that I understand. So when we say 4,000 customers, this is a business to business kind of thing. So it's not it's not just there's 4,000 individuals who are affected. No, there's 400 companies and all 4,000 companies, and all of those 4,000 companies, all of their employees were screwed. So we're talking likely tens of thousands of people, if not over 100,000 people that had this horrible thing happen to them.
Right. And so this company, MyPayrollHR, it was a subsidiary of a company called ValueWise Corporation.
Okay.
Which provided management consulting and professional placement services.
All right.
And the CEO is a guy by the name of Michael T. Mann.
Okay.
Not the director, Michael Mann.
Uh-huh.
And
which I didn't know there was a director named Michael Mann.
There is. Same spelling.
Different middle initial? Hope so.
Probably.
To make sure that SAG doesn't get them confused, he better.
Right. That would be tragic. But anyway, so the day the news broke, ValueWise, the parent company, its website had been taken down, and another strange message was sent out to its clients.
Okay, so there was a weird message that was sent out to the MyPayrollHR that's like, "Hey, you just got screwed. Just wanted to let you know." But then this was a message from the parent company to the parent company's clients.
Yes.
Gotcha.
And so here's what it said. We had an issue with one of our parent company's non-payroll related accounts that caused the bank to freeze the payroll account. This is preventing us from generating transactions and causing reversals on recent transactions. We are working closely with our bank to address this. We will be updating clients via our company messages and sending email blasts with updates. We sincerely appreciate your patience as we work through this matter.
Well, that sounds horrible.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Nothing you want to hear.
Yeah. Well, and it's rather cryptic too, where
super cryptic.
It like clearly the message is something horrible happened, and it's also you don't really know the horrible thing that happened. You something horrible happened, and we're making sure that you still have lots of unanswered questions.
Right. Yeah. Something horrible has happened, and we're not at liberty to talk about it.
But buckle up.
But you're along the ride with us.
Yeah. Yeah. Can't get off this roller coaster.
Yeah. Buckle up. And the CEO, Michael Mann.
Uh-huh. Yep. What about that dude?
No one could find him.
No one could find him?
Yeah, no one knew where he was.
He just poof disappeared.
Essentially, yeah.
Like smoke bomb, poof, and then wow, that's some serious bad guy shit.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, thousands of people not only get unpaid, they get double unpaid, triple unpaid.
Yeah.
And the guy in charge of it all is nowhere to be found.
Yeah, it's like, hey, we need to talk to the boss. Oh, you know what?
Can we talk to the person in charge? Oh,
his voicemail's full, and his email is sending its out of office automatic reply. So
right,
yeah. So where was the guy? Where's this Michael T. Mann?
So before we kind of track that dude down, the nature of like people started putting this together pretty quickly. So like that Albany Business Review, like I think they had one of the earliest stories about what was happening.
Okay.
And so they and other like outlets that reported on this, and everything's in the show notes for people that want to look into all the specific places because the reporting was really good. But they started piecing it together pretty quickly. But it's super convoluted.
Okay.
So stick with us as we talk through it. So MyPayroll, they worked with a company called Cachet Financial Services. I think I'm pronouncing it. Do you think that's Cachet?
Yeah, that's totally Cachet.
Cachet.
Yeah, it's
Cachet.
French. It makes them fancier. It's a super fancy financial service.
Right.
Cachet. They
worked with Cachet Financial Services. MyPayroll would send a file to Cachet with payroll details for its customers. You know, so it said who was supposed to get what money and where it was supposed to go.
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
The money from MyPayroll's customers would end up in a Cache holding account.
Okay.
And then Cache would distribute the money according to the file sent to them by MyPayrollHR. Got it?
Yeah, just to sum up. So it sounds like,
Yeah.
and again, if this is similar to how Gusto does my payroll, it sounds like my payroll HR yanks the money out of their customers' accounts to give to their employees, but then my payroll in terms of following the money, my payroll hands it off to Cache, and then Cache puts it in everybody's bank accounts. Okay,
Right.
Cool, got it.
Yep. So in early September 2019, this is when this is all like happening.
Yeah.
MyPayroll sent its file to Cache to deposit all of its customers' money, but not into the Cache holding account like it normally did.
Okay.
Instead, it instructed them to put the money into a Pioneer savings bank account, a Pioneer bank savings account controlled by MyPayrollHR.
Okay, so basically my payroll took the money from their clients, they handed it off to Cache, but instead of giving Cache instructions going, here's who gets this, here's what employees get this money, they're like, hey, here's a bunch of money and just put it in our account at this other bank. That's what happened? Okay.
That's essentially what happened.
And how much money?
Like
was
$30 million.
Just $30 million.
$30 million.
No big whoop.
Yeah. So these are weird instructions, right?
Yeah.
For Cache to do this.
Yeah.
It's so strange, in fact, that Cache's general counsel, Wendy Slavkin, she called Pioneer Bank to see what this was all about. And when she talked to Pioneer Bank, she was told that MyPayrollHR's Pioneer bank account had been frozen.
Okay. And that implies that it had been frozen by like the law, the long arm of the law froze it?
No, if I understand it correctly, banks can freeze accounts at any time.
Oh, because something weird.
Yeah, because
something.
Usually because they're suspicious of something. There's suspicious activity. So they don't need they don't need a gumshoe to come in like, hey, freeze.
Okay,
those bank accounts. Yeah,
it's like my credit card. Like
totally.
When I all of a sudden go and buy commercial kitchen equipment for the remodel that I did in my kitchen in my home, and they go, that's weird. He's never bought anything for a restaurant before. So they shut down my credit card and they say, hey, we need to talk to you before we do anything. It's basically that, but to the tune of $30 million.
Right.
Good.
So back to this, like how this all kind of mechanically happened.
Yeah.
So this payroll file submitted by MyPayrollHR instructed the banks for its various clients, right? The client banks, their customer banks, to draw on that Cache holding account.
Gotcha.
Right? Where the money normally came from.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
Even though the 30 million didn't go to the holding account,
right?
It went to Pioneer.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Gotcha. So yeah, I get what you're saying.
So things kind of transpired like they normally do, except the money wasn't the normal $30 million. The money that provided by MyPayrollHR wasn't in the Cache holding account.
Yeah.
So Cache basically can see this, right?
Yeah.
And so then they,
So they were basically, these downstream banks where the employees had their accounts, they basically were requesting money from Cache that either Cache would give the money to them wrongly or say, hey, not sufficient funds.
If I understand it, MyPayrollHR instructed the banks to draw on the holding account from Cache.
Okay.
Right?
Yes.
Like the money was there like it normally was.
Right.
But it wasn't. And so then when Cache is paying like $30 million that they didn't get.
Gotcha.
Because this is a big intermediary bank, right? So they've got money.
Yeah,
right?
Sure.
But they're paying out money that they should have gotten from another source. Right?
Okay. So they did send the money out.
Right.
Oh, which makes sense. Okay.
So they see this happen. And so then Cache submits a request to reverse that transaction.
Gotcha.
But because apparently they formatted the request incorrectly, so then they submitted a second request.
Okay.
To reverse it.
Okay.
And here's the thing. Banks are not supposed to do this. Like reversing transactions like of this magnitude, they're not supposed to do it.
Okay. Like just
Well,
their
especially if
internal
it's in
rules
this
or
case.
like
Well, yeah, because in
regulation?
this case, especially because in this case, because if it's not formatted correctly, they're not supposed to honor it at all.
Okay.
But
That makes sense. I
so
mean, yeah.
despite that, some banks processed both the reversals.
Okay. Okay.
And that explains why some people saw a month's worth of pay come out of their bank accounts.
Okay. Right. Which
And in
is
one
crazy.
case, so you're going to love this. In one case, according to a CBS News report, the owner of an animal rescue shelter said that one of her employees' bank account was overdrafted by nearly $1 million.
Wait, by how much?
Nearly $1 million.
Okay. Stop the presses, because I have so many questions about that, because I mean, I'm not
It doesn't even
questioning.
make sense that it would
No.
get that bad. But
No.
I mean, I have no reason not to believe CBS News reporting.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But
Like they got the woman on the record. Like, I don't know why she would lie about that.
Right,
Because that is insane.
Yeah, but what that sounds like, there's some buddy who works at an animal rescue shelter that makes over $1 million a month, or nearly $1 million.
I mean,
a month.
there's not, I mean, I don't know. Maybe somebody can get in touch with us and explain to us how it even got to that bad. But that doesn't make any sense, because nobody at an animal shelter is making $1 million a month. Okay.
No one at an animal shelter. So the problem is that she had her month's worth of paychecks reversed, and she's a gambling addict. So that's why she was overdrawn by nearly $1 million. So
Nuts, right?
Yeah. Regardless, this is basically a textbook banking clusterfuck.
Yeah. No argument. Okay. So people, the employees of MyPayrollHR's customers, right?
Yes.
They are seeing their paychecks reverse out of their bank accounts. In some cases, more than once. In some cases, multiple times, more than twice in some cases.
Yeah.
So this is causing all kinds of chaos and angst.
Yeah. Yeah. Like
And
I
people,
said, you can't screw up payroll, or the people will revolt.
No. I mean, yeah, you want to see a society become unhinged?
Yeah.
Exactly. Over something that isn't involved in politics.
Right.
It's their paychecks.
Yeah. They're storming the HR. It's the insurrection of the HR office.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey,
so,
hang Mike Mann. That's what they were saying. Hang Mike Mann.
Yeah. So people are wondering how they're going to get their money back, right? And business owners are wondering how they can help their employees, because, I mean, they're in this jam, and like as a business owner, you have to be imagining, like, your employees are coming to you and they're saying, what the hell is going on? And the business owners don't know anything more than the employees, really, but they feel a certain responsibility, because they probably don't do the payroll. They pay MyPayrollHR to do the payroll.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's the other thing too, being on that side of things at my job, I know that I need my employees to be happy and to want to work at my company. And this is, and so obviously this is making them not feel either of those ways. Yeah. And the other thing is, when they come to you and go, what the hell's going on? I don't know is not that's not an okay answer.
Yeah. Not that no one will be satisfied by that.
Not at all. That'll make them even more pissed off.
Yeah. So to only kind of makes matters slightly worse, all the taxes related to all these paychecks also lost.
No.
Yeah.
Because that's even okay. So it wasn't a textbook clusterfuck before. This is a textbook Uber clusterfuck.
Yeah.
Because that's like some bad shit. Not for just my payroll HR. That's bad shit for these companies.
Yeah. So you're talking about federal, state, local, FICA.
Yeah.
No, none of that money is going where it's supposed to go.
Yeah.
And this especially would get complex, as we've kind of established, that if you have employees in different states, and that even if they live in certain cities, like that just gets so complicated so fast.
Yeah, absolutely.
And National Payment Corp, which is the most generic sounding business name I think I've heard in a while. They're a company that processes tax payments via the Automated Clearinghouse Network, so ACH. National Payment Corp said it could not process $4 million in tax payments because of money that was froze at Pioneer Bank.
Yeah, unbelievable nightmare.
Yeah, terrible. It is a nightmare, right? Like this is something that like people would probably have nightmares about, like that money is like being drained from their bank account.
Yeah. And if it happened, yeah, and the people at MyPayrollHR were blindsided by this. So obviously all of their customers, I mean, we've already said they were blindsided by this as well, because payroll must have been going through just fine for as long as they've been using the company. And then you show up at work and you've got people with torches and pitchforks outside your office demanding that they get all their damn money back.
And so, like I said, if you go through some of the stories in the show notes, you'll see that people were able, you just call, like reporters are just calling these places up and like, what's going on? And they just tell them, it's like, it was evident that the banks only knew a little bit more than the people calling them.
Which again,
none of it made any sense,
and that's not an acceptable answer.
No, it is not.
Nobody's able to get acceptable answers, and so everybody's getting like it's. You've heard of compounded interest. This is compounded consternation.
Yeah,
that's a good word.
It is.
Yeah,
it is compounded consternation.
Compounded.
And all while this is all going on, everybody was looking for this one guy, this one man, Michael Mann.
Okay, so Caleb, who is he? Who is this dude, Michael Mann? Because I do know that the New York Times referred to him as a quote shadowy entrepreneur, but that could describe a lot of entrepreneurs.
Sure could.
Yeah, but I guess they call him that because he had basically no online presence. And just to remind people, this happened in the recent past. This was 2019 when all this stuff went down. In 2019, everybody has an online presence, but not Michael Mann.
Not Michael Mann.
And despite his lack of an online presence, it was like a dozen companies that he ran. He was like in charge of in the US.
Yep. So ValueWise was the parent company, and these subsidiaries, of which MyPayrollHR was one of them. Mann he was the president of ValueWise, and according to the Times Union, which was a newspaper that serves like New York's capital region around Albany, the ValueWise website said about Michael Mann, he started ValueWise in 2006 after years as a road warrior with a big management consulting firm. Michael Mann decided that there had to be a better way, the archived website said, a way to prosper in the world of consulting, which he loved, and achieve a more balanced lifestyle.
Yeah.
And
that sounds like a write-up of the promising new, here's this Michael Mann and he's got some great ideas about consulting. He's going to change the world to make everyone prosperous and happy.
Yeah. Well, anyway, he ValueWise primarily did consulting services, and some of these other businesses, the subsidiaries that owned it, it had one called Lincoln Academy. This was a school for promising basketball players in North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess a charter school. I guess that would be a charter school. Who knows?
Yeah, it sounds. Lincoln Academy definitely sounds like the name of a charter. There's actually 5,000 charter schools across the United States
called Lincoln Academy.
Lincoln Academy. Some for promising basketball players. Some for promising chess players.
Oh, that's nice. Another one of the subsidiaries is called HireFlux. It's a healthcare temp agency, and it
Okay.
operated in several cities. And there was a physical therapy chain, and then there was multiple consulting and payroll companies. So this man, Michael man,
I hate it when you say that. I hate every time you say that. I hate it in my heart.
why?
It just bothers me so.
All right, I'll stop.
No, keep going,
or
please.
maybe I won't.
Please.
Maybe I won't.
Just
Okay, so Michael
just
Mann.
turn the knife.
Michael Mann.
Who? Oh, you mean this man, Michael Mann?
That's the one.
Okay.
He owns more than a dozen companies, employs hundreds of people, including the folks that work at MyPayrollHR. And
How many people worked at MyPayrollHR?
So I said 200 earlier, and I'm not sure that's correct. That may have been for all of like the subsidiaries.
Okay.
It depends on the sources, but like I think I found found another source that said there was 40 employees at MyPayrollHR.
Okay.
But you figure amongst a dozen companies, 200.
Okay.
Sounds about
Gotcha.
right. You know,
Okay.
seems reasonable.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so nobody knows where he is. But people were looking for this guy. Obviously, people were pissed.
Yeah.
People had the questions, Greg Kite.
Right. So, and in my mind, I'm thinking like I go to immediately to Saddam Hussein in a spider hole. Was this man, Michael Mann, was he in a spider hole?
With a unruly beard?
Yeah. With a sweet like Unabomber beard.
Yeah. But no, like, as we said, when thousands of people don't get paid, and some of them get unpaid, in some cases multiple times, people are going to start talking about that. As you said, people are going to be pissed.
Yeah.
They're going to start demanding answers. And when nobody has answers, those people are going to start finding out, well, this is the guy that might have the answers, and then nobody can find him.
Yeah.
And the local media, like I said, picked up on this right away. And it started hitting national news shortly after that. It took about a week for like, you know, I saw, you know, Wall Street Journal articles, NBC News, like more of the national coverage started happening later.
Uh-huh.
But this guy, Michael Mann.
Wait, say it right.
This man.
There you go.
Michael
there it is.
Mann.
That's the sweetness.
His name was everywhere and everyone's looking for him. And eventually what you notice is that his lawyer's name starts popping up in some of these stories, and he's telling these outlets that his client was cooperating with authorities. And so after about a week or so, I didn't piece together the timeline perfectly, but after a week of essentially no one knowing where this guy is, on September 10th, he went with his lawyer to the U.S. Attorney's Office in Albany, and he was arrested and charged with bank fraud.
Which makes it sound like he was in his lawyer's office, like shouting sanctuary at the top of his lungs for a week.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then my understanding is he just sang like a bird once he got arrested, and he wasn't trying to cover things up. He was just like, yeah, you caught me. Here's everything that happens. And you put the actual complaint in the show notes, right?
Yeah. So the complaint comes from one of the stories that was covering at the time called Krebs on Security.
Okay.
They linked to the complaint, and you can read the whole complaint. It's pretty short, but it's there, and essentially it has everything. It basically lays everything out, like what he was up to.
Right. And so the things that you told me to say here, based on your research, is that it all began. So this man, Michael Mann, his scheme began with him obtaining loans through false pretenses and lies, and that MyPayrollHR was a legitimate business. But this man, Michael Mann, admitted that some of the companies that he owned, some of these dozen companies that he owned, he created them solely and expressly to carry out the fraud. So he's using these fake businesses to create fake accounts receivables.
Yep.
And then he's using those fake receivables as collateral to borrow money from banks. And that's how he was getting. So it was basically, this wasn't payroll fraud. This was loan fraud.
Yeah. Essentially,
Okay.
that's how it started, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so from there, what's weird is that he just kept using the money that he was getting from the banks to start more fake businesses, creating more fake invoices. And then, those invoices would say, oh, we did these services for this company, but that was all phony.
Okay.
And then creates more receivables. And then he goes, obtains more loans under those with putting up the receivables as collateral.
Right. Which and so here's a thought. I mean, tell me what you think about this.
Yeah.
That almost sounds like it's some sort of weird like mutant cousin of a Ponzi scheme, where I wonder if to like service the loans he already had, there was pressure for him to get more loans, so that he used the money from the new loans to service the old loans. But oh no, now he has more loans he has to service the debt on. So you got to get. Do you think maybe that was kind of the snowball he found himself in?
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially, it's either that or it's essentially a kiting scheme, right? A really elaborate kiting scheme. And that,
Okay.
so here's the deal with all this phony business going on. He was kiting between Pioneer Bank and Bank of America.
Okay.
But he was often using money from the payroll businesses, because that's where the liquidity could come from, right?
Yeah, okay. Because it was legit. He was actually earning.
Because the payroll, there was I don't remember how many payroll companies there were, but those were legitimate businesses, right?
Mm-hmm.
And through all of this, through all the phony businesses and the phony invoices and the phony receivables, he was able to obtain $70 million in loans.
Crazy. And just so that everybody listening knows, a kiting scheme, my favorite type of scheme, because it was named after my family, the Kites. A kiting scheme is basically where you write a check, like a physical check from an account that has insufficient funds to cash that check, but you know that since it's a physical check, it's going to take a few days for banks to process that physical check. And so but you still send it off, hoping and planning on having money in the account by the time it does get processed, so that you have money so that it actually clears. And it's a very stressful way to create a very short-term loan from your bank, a very short-term loan from your bank, a very unauthorized loan from your bank, and a rather illegal loan from your bank. That's check kiting. And it seems like the dumbest thing to do ever, because it's like, really, you just get fake funds for a few days.
Yeah. And I mean, I think he said, so this man, Michael Mann.
Yeah.
He claimed that he was doing all this due to business and financial pressure, which is a little weird.
No, but it makes sense, because he's got these loans that he needs to pay. He's
right.
So I think, I mean, again, it's speculation, but I 100% think that's the financial pressure.
Right. But he created the pressure through illegal means. So he creates these fake invoices, he creates these fake receivables, and he borrows money. So he's committing bank fraud to get these loans, and then the pressure from those loans causes him to create more loans through more phony invoices.
Yeah, because he probably
receivables.
Just pocketed the money from the first loan to buy like a nice car and go on a sweet vacation. And then he's like, oh shit, I just pocketed all that money. And those were, so now I got to make another loan to pay off this first loan. That's what I think.
Fine.
Like I said,
fine.
Could be
wrong. So then I have one question for you, Greg.
Yes. Ask me.
Who wants to work that hard?
No one. No one.
God, that sounds terrible.
Absolutely not. So here's the thing. I mean, I sure as hell don't want to work that hard. And that's one of the things that we see in so many of these frauds, is that I've got to assume completely unintentionally, these people like going, here's some easy money. And then they realize that they just opened themselves up to this what's the right, a life of Sisyphus, who's rolling the stone up the hill just for it to roll back down for eternity. And that's what he has to do to keep up, to try to keep himself out of jail and out of hot water with this whole thing. But regardless of this, Pioneer Bank was that was the bank that loaned Michael Mann, the largest amount of money out of any other institution. So most of these bullshit loans were given by Pioneer Bank.
Yep.
And he wanted to temporarily reduce the amount that he owed them, but Pioneer Bank was suspicious of some of his activities, which makes sense to me because I have a pretty close relationship with the banks that we have some pretty sizable loans with at the companies I work for, and it's a pretty tight relationship, and they do have their antenna up for suspicious activity. So I could totally get it that they're going, something's not feeling right with this man, Michael Mann. So Pioneer's going, we're not feeling good. So that's why they froze his account there, is my understanding.
Yep.
And then Bank of America, then shortly after that, also froze his Michael Mann's accounts at Bank of America. And so, and then with the accounts frozen, that's what tipped the scales and revealed the fraud is all this, right?
Right. Yeah.
So
then he used that money from MyPayroll, right? And he sent it to Pioneer, right?
Okay.
So the money gets there because again, he was trying to reduce the money they owe them, but because they were,
and that's wait, hold on, that's the $30 million we were talking about.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. And so, but the money got there, and then Pioneer froze the account.
Okay.
And that's so when Cachet tried to reverse it, that's why they couldn't reverse it.
Right.
Okay. Because Pioneer's like, there's something fishy going on. The money stays. Right.
Gotcha. Yep.
And then of course, then they tried again. And so nobody could get their money back. The tax authorities couldn't get their money back. And you got this clusterfuck.
Clusterfuck. Yeah. That's it. I think, is that going to be the title of this episode? Payroll clusterfuck.
Well, we will consider it.
Okay. I hope so.
I mean, we'll have to edit this out because there is a name on the episode.
Right. And the name's Payroll Clusterfuck. Or maybe it's this man, Michael Mann. What a pathetic loser.
So the good news, well, is there good news? I don't know. But a lot of this money got repaid quickly.
Oh,
right?
That is good news.
Yeah. And I mean, if you look at the reporting, in one Wall Street Journal story, it said 97% of the people affected got their money back within a couple weeks.
Okay.
I mean, unfortunately, it just doesn't take long for a fraud like this to inflict like serious damage on people.
Right.
And so, I read, several stories about employees of these businesses who are negatively affected. And I mean, that's awful. It's just regular people that have no control whatsoever.
Like people, like just normal people working at animal shelters earning $1 million a month. These normal people just got screwed.
People. Yeah. And if that wasn't bad enough, this came out short, I don't know, a week or two. I don't remember the exact, it was actually the Daily Mail of all places. The Daily Mail reported something pretty maddening. A subsidiary of United Health Group is a huge health insurance company.
Yeah.
They used ValueWise, actually a subsidiary of theirs used ValueWise for IT staffing services. And they suspected this man, Michael Mann, of forging records to show that he had all these receivables due from United Health, right?
Okay.
Big giant company like United Health is massive, right?
Yeah.
And so if they're your client, if you said, I got 100 million in receivables from like somebody might look at it on paper. They'd be like, that seems reasonable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Right. Because big company, they probably owe you a lot of money. Yeah.
But they suspected something was up. So they reported him and ValueWise Corp to the FBI because they suspected fraud. And they made this report in 2017.
In 2017, which
2 years before the
and
fraud.
Again, to remind everyone of the timeline, the turds hit the fans in 2019.
Yeah.
So 2 years prior to this, the FBI already had a tip saying, "Hey, go check this guy out."
Yeah.
So he was on their radar. Awesome.
Yeah. In August 2020, this man, Michael Mann, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit wire fraud, 1 count of aggravated identity theft, 9 counts of bank fraud, and 1 count of filing a false tax return.
And just so
August of 2020. So about less than a year after everything went down.
Okay.
So that's when he pleaded guilty. He was sentenced in August of 2021 to 144 months. So just over 12 years in prison.
Yeah.
And he reported to prison shortly after that in September.
So one of the things that sticks out to me, though, is you said that he was committed to one count of conspiracy.
Yes.
And that would imply that he had like a team for his heist.
He had some help.
And so so it looks like there was a guy named Luke Steiner of Minnesota who was also pled guilty to conspiracy in 2020. And there was another dude named Derek Schwartz from Texas who was also charged with conspiracy in August of 2021. So Luke and Derek they helped this man, Michael Mann, obtain the loans that he got on the phony receivables, right?
Yep.
Okay.
In the case of Derek Schwartz, I couldn't find any updates. I mean, he was just charged in August of 2021.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably, so they're allegations at this point.
Okay. But that's super recent. That's
really recent.
Depending on when you listen to this podcast, that might be more recent than others.
True.
Who listened to this
the press release from the DOJ is in the show notes if you want to read the details on those guys.
Perfect.
Even more recently, a Times Union article went into the exhausting nature of this fraud. And that's what we talked about, that this sounds just awful.
Yeah.
It sounded like an awful fraud to have to perpetrate.
Yes.
Couldn't even enjoy it, really, which is weird because, little sidebar, in all the research that I did, Michael Mann did not really, Michael Mann, did not really, I did not get the impression that he was really enjoying all this money that he was helping himself to. He had a relatively nice house on a lake. And he had like a Jeep. He had maybe a nice Jeep, but I read somewhere that he showed up to work in t-shirt and jeans. Like he was very, I don't know, maybe it was his past as a consultant or whatever, but I did not get the impression that he was, living a lavish lifestyle.
Yeah, that doesn't, a Jeep and t-shirt and jeans doesn't sound, it sounds like maybe a relaxed lifestyle.
Right. And
but not necessarily luxurious.
Right. I mean, sometimes, you think about it, it's like, maybe you just want to commit some fraud so you can take it easy.
Yeah.
But in this case, he wasn't taking it easy. It sounded like an awful fraud.
Right. But that is interesting that you mentioned that, because as we know, the main red flag for fraud is the perpetrator living beyond their means. But I think that anybody who looks at a CEO of a multi-million-dollar company and sees them wearing jeans and a t-shirt and driving a Jeep, they're probably like, that seems maybe below his means. This guy, maybe we need to be concerned, because why is this guy just in t-shirts and jeans and just driving a Wrangler?
Yeah, right. So anyway, this Times Union article went into these details of to the extent that he went to cover up this fraud. And this was all revealed in a lawsuit between Pioneer Bank and Michael Mann's accounting firm, Teal, Becker, and Chiaramonte.
Shakiramonte.
Did I say that right?
I think it's Shakiramonte.
Shakiramonte. Anyway, here's a quote. The documents also show Mann's elaborate efforts to keep the fraud going, a process of constantly manipulating people and documents that was so exhausting and time-consuming that it had become nearly a full-time job.
Which is crazy and ironic, because if you remember from earlier, Mann says he started these businesses to, quote, achieve a more balanced lifestyle, but instead he backed himself into an exhausting second full-time job of keeping these frauds alive. And I love the details, because Michael Mann they said that he was emailing people at Pioneer Bank all the time because he was overdrawn in his accounts. And he'd like call him up and be like, hey, listen, I know I'm overdrawn. No big whoop. There's just a timing issue, but the money's on its way. The check's in the mail. Don't worry about it.
And that's a kiting scheme.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah,
that's a kiting scheme.
Right. So he's like doing it. He's like telling them, hey,
telling them what he's
don't
doing.
worry about it. I'm doing a kiting scheme. Just relax for a couple days. Yeah. Jesus. Fucking bankers. So, but apparently, even though he kept coming to them and saying, don't worry about it, there's just a timing issue, Pioneer Bank never like really asked him about this recurring problem of a timing issue.
Right.
But I've got to assume, again, like you said, they froze his accounts because they were just like, something wrong's going on.
Right.
So finally they hit the limit and we're like, okay, we just got to shut this down. I mean, they probably already were like, this is suspicious.
Yeah,
And then when the money got
after
directed
a while,
to the wrong place.
Well, yeah, you have to. And again, this is a podcast. We're going to do some speculating.
Of course.
Eventually, somebody at Pioneer Bank, the right person at Pioneer Bank, like found out what was going on. And they're like, "Oh, no, freeze the, like, no way." Like that. It must have been like, because I read something about he had a pretty good relationship with someone there, and like this was the person that he would always call up, and he would say things like, "Hey, do me a favor and let's just skip this part." And like, you're just like, oh my gosh. And like,
Right.
and then finally someone who wasn't involved in someone at Pioneer Bank who wasn't involved in the relationship at all must have like talked to someone and be like, wait, we're doing what? Why? What?
Right.
Like, no,
Right.
fuck no. Like freeze his accounts. Like, and let's find out what's going on.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. Yeah. You can stretch it too far. And again, like we said, when all that money got diverted from the Cache account
Yeah.
to Pioneer, that's finally when they were like, okay, there's 100%
Right.
something wrong here. Let's shut all this shit down till we figure it out.
Yeah. Man. Michael Mann. All right, Greg, did we learn anything? I don't know.
Yeah, man. I mean, seriously, going through this case, I love it because I feel like there's tons of stuff to look at. So first off, and we beat this drum a lot, crime doesn't pay. If you're going to work your ass off, work it off doing something that pays better and that isn't a fucking crime.
Right.
Because, I mean, again, we've said it before, so many of the fraud schemes we look at, somebody thinks they're going into easy money and then goes, oh no, now I've got this lie I have to perpetuate for ad nauseum for eternity.
For the forever.
Forever. Yeah. And it's the hardest job. And it's like you could work less hard at a legit, at a legit side hustle, to possibly make more money. And for sure, you're making more money because you're not going to get caught and sent to jail and have to repay all the money that you stole. And it makes me think of, and I swear, tell me if we haven't already talked about this on the podcast on another episode. But whenever I see a fraudster who ends up doing all this work just to keep all the, juggling all the balls for their fraud, I think of those stories of like meth addicts who would take shredded documents and like reassemble them so that they could get like a credit card application pieced back together, like somebody's social security number. And it's like, if you have the patience and determination to piece back together a credit card application, you absolutely have the skill set to be a sandwich artist. So do that instead of doing this. So that's one thing is it's like, I mean, and again, we talk about red flags. One of the red flags is people never taking vacation, which is partly because they don't want somebody else to do their job while they're on vacation. But also part of them not taking a vacation is they can't. They got too much to do to keep all, like I said, to keep all those balls in the air. So that's a big thing I learned. But I thought that even more interesting was just these fake accounts receivable, and that's what he was using. Because I didn't know. I actually did a little research myself, Caleb, with the receivable stuff, and I came to the conclusion that either the auditors or the banks or both dropped the ball big time on these fake receivables. So because what I did, again, in my day job, I've got a very close relationship with a bank that does our commercial loans with them. We've got, I think between my all my companies, we've got somewhere along the lines about $20 million of loans from banks for the medical real estate companies that I work for. And so I called my banker and I wanted to know, because we only there's two different entities. Each has a little over $10 million with this bank in loans. And I asked him what was the threshold, because we only have to have a review. We don't have to have a full-blown audit. And he said that the threshold is $10 million. So if you have over $10 million in loans that you're supposed to be audited, I guess he got a special exception for us. And so even though we've got, we're less than $20 million at each entity, but it is over 10 million, and they just got us an exception to save us a little bit of money. But generally speaking, $10 million, that's when you're going to get audited, not reviewed. And so you've got to assume that if he had $70 million out, that means he has more than 10. And I think even we saw at Pioneer Bank, he had somewhere to the tune of 30 million from Pioneer Bank. Do you remember what it said? That's what's coming to my mind.
I don't know if it was specifically to Pioneer Bank, but all told, like the total fraud was about 100 million.
Okay.
And change.
So you got
30 million from the MyPayroll stuff that he snagged to cover his kiting adventure.
Yeah, right.
And he obtained 70 million in loans through banking fraud.
There you go. So 70 million in loans, he's for sure over the $10 million threshold. So he should be getting audited. And those audits include receivables confirmations, which is where the auditor sends out, they say, okay, who owes you money? Payroll HR. And they say, cool, we're going to send them letters just to make sure that they really owe you this money. So I'm going to say that the auditors fucked it up. At least at the very minimum, they didn't audit the receivables thoroughly enough.
Right.
Now I'm wondering if you want to take issue with that, because you are a former auditor, and we've talked about it before, where auditors use samples and things like that, and that it could have. Do you think they screwed up, or do you think it just slipped through the cracks?
I mean, because they don't really get into this, at least in the reporting that I found, it just isn't clear to me how exactly the auditors, to the extent that they were involved. And so here's the thing, but you're right. Confirmation of receivables is a common way to do that, right? But
I think it's a required way to do it.
Well, it might be. Yeah. Again, my memory, is it always required? I'm unsure, but
send us an email, auditors, and tell us if it's required or not.
Yeah. If it's required procedures. If it is, then yes, then there's obviously something seriously wrong here. But there's always on audit, there's always alternative procedures. Right.
Okay.
So alternative procedures are something that you can use if, for whatever reason, the primary procedures that you should use on a particular account aren't possible for whatever. And this guy, Michael Mann, he was making up all these excuses to his bank. I have to imagine that if he was being audited, that he was making all kinds of excuses to his auditors and be like, hey guys, we can't do the confirmations. And this is why, because there's so many, because there's so whatever.
Okay.
And the auditors would be like, because they didn't want to push back, or who knows? This is all speculation at this point.
Right.
But it's conceivable to me that there could have been, he could have maybe talked his way out of it. And the auditors would have gone along, but we just don't know.
Okay, but I also hate that, because the reporting shows that some of the businesses that he created for the sole purpose of creating fake receivables to borrow money against. So those companies, if all they had, if it was just a total bullshit company with all
a small
bullshit
amount of cash
receivables,
and a ton of receivables,
then auditors got to find. So I still am putting a lot of blame on the auditors with that. So again, somewhat speculation, but I think there's a lot to it that the auditors screwed up. If you don't like what I said, pick a fight with Francine McKenna. Here's the other thing that you need that came to mind. Well, and this came out of my conversation with my banker, is that when a bank lends money and they use receivables as collateral. First off, I asked him how often does that happen, and he was like, "That happens all the time.
All the time, yeah,
all the time. That's super common. So it's a very common practice. My loans with the bank, the collateral is the real estate, but they do an appraisal of our real estate to make sure that it's as valuable as we say it is. So them doing these receivables acknowledgments is basically their due diligence themselves to make sure that the receivables are valued properly. And again, I was going, okay, how much up to what level do you loan against the value of the receivables? And he said typically generally they'll easily lend between 75 to 80% of the value of the receivables. He even said sometimes they'll loan up to 90% of the value of the receivables, which that blew my mind because, again, real estate, that's a very secure collateral instrument. They'll only loan me up to 80% on my real estate. So the fact that so he basically blew his cover.
So it's kind of like, so maybe I'm overthinking it, but it's almost like accounts receivables are they're treating them as future cash flows, right? And so they're saying, okay, well, if you assume a 10% allowance for doubtful accounts, so we'll loan you 90% of whatever your receivables balances are. Because they're essentially, but 90%, like they're saying as good as cash. I'm surprised banks are that. That seems risky for a bank. That doesn't seem nearly conservative enough for a bank.
Right. That's what I was. And now he clearly was like, they begrudgingly loan up to 90%, but they've been known to do it.
Okay.
But he also said, listen to this. He said they would. So typically, this is what he said. Typically, they'd lend between 75 and 80% of the value of eligible receivables. And he went into explaining what that meant for eligible receivables. Because when they dig into these receivables, they say, well, we're not going to count these. And sometimes it's like, well, this account is 120 days past due. So that's not
doesn't count.
We're still going to take it as collateral, but we're not going to count that as part of the value. Or if there's something else that causes them like heartburn about any of the receivables, they can just label them ineligible and not include them in the calculation for the loan. So with that, I'm going to say these banks again did not do enough due diligence. Or here's another thought that I had. So I would say both the banks and the auditors did not audit or confirm or acknowledge the receivables adequately. The other thing I'm wondering, so going back to the whole thing about Michael Mann working his ass off to keep these things going, because this is a common thing that happens in other receivables frauds, is that the person who's committing the fraud, they say, oh, you've got a receivable to ABC, Holdings Incorporated. And they go, oh yeah, we totally have that receivable. And they go, cool. What's our contact info? We want to just talk to him about this receivable. They go, oh, here's their contact info. And it's really just a fake address that comes back to the person.
Right.
Who's so I could see that being part of this full-time job, this full-time side hustle to keep the fraud alive, is if he's giving them fake contact info and then he's out having to fill out all this information and give all this info to confirm his own receivables. So he's got to go, get new addresses somehow at the UPS store or whatever and make them part
PO
of
boxes, whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So that could be part of it too. And if that's the case, well, two things. One, my first point is underlined, where it's like, do something. If you're working that hard, do something that's legit.
Right.
But also, it also kind of underscores the fact that the auditors and the banks didn't do enough, because part of the audit practice is don't take their word for it. If they say they've got this is a creditor of theirs, or sorry, a debtor of theirs, someone who owes them money, you need to go and find their contact info independent of your client, so that you can know that you're sending it to the right people. So I still say, even if he was doing that, it underlines the other 2 points that I already made.
But super interesting.
So fascinating.
Yeah.
And so crazy how many people were affected by this whole thing.
Oh, dude.
You fucked up, Michael Mann. All right, that's it for this episode. And remember, if you commit payroll fraud, you will be directly deposited in jail.
And also remember that if someone calls you a workaholic, they're basically accusing you of committing a poorly thought out fraud.
Exactly. And if you want to drop us a line, many of you have, and we so appreciate the emails that we receive and the social media feedback that we receive. But if you want to send us an email, please send that to ohmyfraud@earmarkcpe.com. And Caleb, if they want to talk directly to you, where can people find you out there in the internet world?
On Twitter @CNewquist and LinkedIn /Caleb Newquist. Greg. where are you on the internet?
Same thing. Twitter, I'm at Greg Kite. And on LinkedIn, I am linkedin.com/Greg Kite.
Oh My Fraud is written by Caleb Newquist and Greg Kite. Our producer is Zach Frank. If you like the show, leave us a review or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And for the accountants out there, if you listen to this podcast on Earmark, you can earn free CPE credit. Isn't that nice?
Wonderful.
Join us next time for more avarice, swindlers, and scams. For more stories that will make you say,
Oh, my fraud.